Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling this December 18th Public Health and Safety Commission meeting to order at 4 p.m. Public Health and Safety Commissioners, my name is Lois Yum, and I am a Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office. I am honored to be one of your staff liaisons for this commission. Jennifer Campbell, Assistant City Manager, is your other staff liaison that is unfortunately unable to attend this meeting, but will be there for any future meetings for this commission. We also have Kathy Hollywood, City Clerk, and Jackie Rapp, Program Coordinator, that will be taking your commission meeting minutes. As we have not selected a commission chair and vice chair yet, I will be introducing each agenda item for this meeting. Before we continue on, Pam Antill, City Manager for the City of Encinitas, would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Lois. Welcome, commissioners. We're so excited to be at the inaugural meeting of the new Public Health and Safety Commission. With that, it wouldn't be a new commission if we didn't have a little bit of a snafu that I need to tell you about. Unfortunately, when we posted the meeting agenda online, it didn't have the start time. So today we're going to hold our meeting, but we're going to ask that the action items of picking a chair and a vice chair be deferred until the next meeting, which I suspect will end up being a special meeting between now and March. So I apologize for the error, but we want to make sure that we don't have any unintentional Brown Act violations, and we'll go from there. Plus, you'll get a chance to interact with each other and decide who you really want to have be chair and vice chair. So again, welcome, and thank you for volunteering your time to be a part of this new commission.
Thank you very much, Pam. The second item on the agenda is roll call. Jackie, can you please take roll call?
Yes, and when I call your name, just state if you're here. Commissioner Lauren Andrade, how do you say it? I'm sorry.
Andrade.
Andrade.
Here.
Commissioner Alex Dominguez. Here. Commissioner James Morton. Here. Commissioner Robin Sales. Here. Commissioner Marlon Taylor. Here. Commissioner Daniel Vaughn. Commissioner Molly Woods Drake. Here. Let the record show that all members are present.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jackie. The next agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to the fourth agenda item, there are no special presentations and proclamations. However, we will have item 8 heard next, which is the oath of office.
Right, so I am going to administer your oath of office, and you can repeat after me. The first one I'm going to do is I state your name, and when I say state your name, we're just going to go down the line, so each one of you can say your name individually. After that, then you can all go at the same time and repeat after me. So I,
Lauren Andrade.
Alex Dominguez.
James Morton.
Robin Sales,
Marlon Taylor.
Dan Vaughn.
Molly Woods Drake.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you very much, and if you wouldn't mind just signing those, and I will come by and collect them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. The next item on the agenda is oral communications. Do we have any speakers for this item?
Yes, we have one speaker, and it is Rachel Graves.
I'm going to try to be as good at speaking into the microphone as Marlon. We can hear you really well. My name is Rachel. Thank you for your dedication to make Encinitas safe again. Our city is getting less safe by the hour, and citizens are craving your leadership. I wasn't sure if I'd have time to talk about these things during the list of things to do over the year, but I think these things are a little more urgent than things to put on a list. So I have 4 items I think we need to take very seriously and urgently. First, the DUIs. You're going to hear from Captain Lawrence. My brother was killed by a non-citizen drunk in Encinitas 34 years ago. I'm very disturbed to hear that 2023 DUI arrests and collisions are high and a lot higher than 2022. They're up double. The arrests are up doubled, and the collisions are up by 33%. And there were a few more over the weekend, one by the high school. Secondly, I just think action is required immediately on those. Holidays are coming up, and we don't need any more people dying. Number 2, in the wake of the terror attack on Israel and the swastika painting at Torrey Pines High School, Commissioner Marlon Taylor told the School District Liaison Committee on which he serves that, quote, putting on his Navy intel hat, that we would be remiss if we don't think that the threat of something like that to happen here within our community at some point, probably very soon. Marlon's concern has now been also confirmed by the FBI, who has warned Americans, specifically Jewish Americans, of a high threat level. I suggest you make this an urgent priority and take steps now to assure that Encinitans have a level of safety they deserve, especially our children. Number 3, water quality. I suggest this committee recommend to council that we adamantly oppose converting raw sewage into drinking water. Encinitans need you to protect us from Newsom's horrendous plan to put toilet water into our mouths. And number 4, Cardiff residents are very concerned about a large 8+ acre property sitting in the middle of Cardiff. The property is overrun with dead palm trees and debris. It is an overt fire hazard, risking lives and homes of hundreds of neighbors. The property belongs to former mayor and current state senator, Catherine Blakespear. Cardiff needs your help to bring this property owner into compliance. And I don't want to happen what happened in 2014 when I don't know how many of you lived here then, we property taxpayers paid to clean up her property. I don't want that to happen again. But those are 4 urgent things I don't think can wait for a work list for the whole year. Thank you.
There are no other public speakers.
Thank you, Jackie. The next item on the agenda is changes to the agenda. Other than what City Manager Antil had mentioned earlier in the meeting, there are no other changes to the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. However, since this is the first meeting of the commission, we do not have any minutes to approve at this time. As we have completed the oaths of office earlier in the meeting, we will be moving on to item number 9, public safety updates. We will start with item 9A, Fire and Marine Safety Department updates from Fire Chief Gordon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for being here. We would like to just want to say how grateful we are for your guys' service to the city and the community. So thank you. We appreciate it. So I'm going to start off just with a quick annual update. It only goes through November because we haven't finished December yet, but just a high-level brief of what the fire department has been doing. So if you look at the total call volume by our unique incidents, you can see at the bottom the grand total is 6,984 calls. If you notice, the EMS portion of that is a large number of what we do. So 5,103 of those calls were EMS-related calls. And then the rest, as you see, kind of vary along down the list. Motor vehicle collisions were at 488 that we responded to. Now, we don't always respond to every motor vehicle collision unless there's some kind of injury. So I know the sheriffs probably have a little bit more than that. Go to the next one for me. So if you look at by month, it's pretty steady, pretty even. Obviously, the summer months get a little busier, but for the most part, we're pretty steady at the mid 600s into the 700s, and then sometimes we dip into that 500 mark. So the commitments that we have, now we have unique incidents. So if you look up here, the jurisdictional nature of the incident in Encinitas alone, there were 5,880. So the rest of the 6,900-ish number are spread out through different jurisdictions. So Del Mar, Solana Beach, Carlsbad, Rancho Santa Fe, and then sometimes we go further into San Diego or Camp Pendleton, just depending on what the nature of the call is and what the resources look like. We also have the type of commitments. So Encinitas unit commitments. Now, we had 6,900 and something calls. Not every one of those calls gets one apparatus. And so this is where we kind of keep track of how often a unit or apparatus, whether it's a fire engine, fire truck, a brush engine, or an ambulance go. And that was 11,828 responses. So if we look at our non-EMS calls, we had 1,881 that had no emergency medical services needed. Again, the motor vehicle collisions at the bottom there, 488, those are the ones that did not have any EMS-related emergency to it, but we still had to respond and block traffic and do all that kind of stuff. If you look at fires, we had 94 fire others, 116 structure fires. Now, sometimes those structure fires are working, or we get there and there's no fire, and we cancel everyone before they get there. So, and then vehicle fires of 33, and as you go down, you can see that it gets lower and lower from there. So, the non-EMS calls, we had 1,881. Now, was this? I was supposed to say EMS calls. Sorry about the title up there, but so we just kind of switched to a new dispatching where we do a determinant dispatching, which triages the call a little bit more. So you'll see we have a level Charlie, Delta, Bravo, Alpha, Echo, and then it goes to level 8, 5, 9, 10. So those were all just the severity or the acuteness of the call. So when you look at level Echo and Delta, those are our highest priority calls, the most acute call that we can go to. So the patient needs ALS response, so a paramedic at that time. Otherwise, a lot of the other ones are BLS, which is just an EMT call. And the reason I kind of bring this up is with the determinant dispatching, we don't always just send everybody code 3 lights and sirens to every call. We try to do a good job of triaging those and sending the fire engine code 3 and then maybe the ambulance code 2 behind until they really know what's going on. So we try to do a good job of limiting the fire engines and ambulances running around code 3 and disturbing traffic and trying to be as safe as we can. So the net aid exchange, this is an interesting number. So really what we're looking at here is, if you look at that bottom chart here, the aid given versus the aid received. So we go into Carlsbad 1,831 hours approximately, and they provide the same service when they come and run calls in Encinitas at 637 hours approximately. So the net aid is we give them 1,180 hours of our service. Now, if you look down the line, you can see, Del Mar, we provide more, but then you get to Rancho Santa Fe, Solana Beach, and other jurisdictions that we actually receive more aid from other jurisdictions than we give out. So the automatic aid and the boundary drop that we have, all this is showing you is that we do a really good job of sending the closest engine or the closest ambulance or closest truck to the call. So we're not just only sending an Encinitas engine to a call that might be on the other side of the city. If Carlsbad's closer, then they'll come and assist us as well. So we just wanted to explain that, because some people don't understand that there is that mutual aid where all the cities are helping each other. There is no real boundaries. Total response time, I think, this is one of my favorite slides here because we do a really good job with our response times. The response time includes the call taker, so dispatch, how long it takes them to receive a call, how fast our turnout times are. And the turnout time is basically when the call comes at the fire station, how fast can we get all of our gear on or get up from bed and get to the engine or the ambulance and hit responding. And your tires have to be moving for us to count it as a response on this chart. So there's a saying that all models are wrong, but some give value. I think this is maybe a little bit of one because you never know how the internet's working, if it's pinging the engine at the correct time. But the one thing we can do is look for trends with these numbers. And our trend is pretty flat across the board, if you see that. So while we might not be exactly a 5-minute and 37-second response time, we're pretty close in that general area, and which I think is a pretty good response time here in Encinitas. Now, we did adopt a response time standard about 2.5 years ago, which is 90th percentile, all of our apparatus will arrive, or the first apparatus will arrive on scene in at least 8 minutes, and then in Levenheim, it's a rural area, so that's 8 minutes and 30 seconds. So you can see that we're doing a pretty good job with those numbers. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me? Again, pretty high level. I'm sure we'll get into some more details as the commission goes on.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you for the information. I live a few blocks away from the fire station. It makes me feel very safe living so close, and I have a fire hydrant right on my property, or the easement. So I'm always happy when you folks are there and see you all practicing out on Belor and Encinitas Boulevard. So thank you for being there.
Thank you.
Again, thanks for sharing that information. I was able to kind of, I liked how you did the slides because, you know, you also kind of answered some of the questions that I had, like what's a unit commitment? I was able to figure that out. But my question is, with regards to the net aid exchange, tell me a little bit more about that. How does that work? I'm guessing it's a partnership with our neighboring cities, but you know, is there anything formalized or?
So it's all based on the closest apparatus to the
Okay.
call, the incident. So our dispatch, we call it Northcom. They are housed in Rancho Santa Fe. They will look at their board that they have, and their CAD will automatically respond the closest rig or apparatus to the call. So whether it's Encinitas or Carlsbad or Rancho Santa Fe, or Solana Beach, Del Mar, doesn't matter. Whatever's closest, they're going to send. So there are times like a lift assist, which is if you will, it's maybe an elderly person in a skilled nursing facility or at a home where they fall out of bed and they just need help getting put in. We don't normally ask for outside help for those, so we wouldn't use the closest apparatus at that time. We would take that responsibility because it's in our city. But for the most part, those numbers, those hours that are exchanged, we don't necessarily keep track of them in a formal way, except for here just to know what's going on. Because we're going to give to our neighbors when they need, right? Just like they're going to give to us when we need them. So structure fire, you know, they could have 2 Encinitas apparatus on a structure fire in Leucadia, but then Carlsbad might have been closer, so they had 2 or 3 apparatus show up. So they're going to have a net aid of giving us more than what we gave them because they had more apparatus on the call. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Makes perfect sense. My last question. I know every season brings its unique challenges. You know, again, one of the things that I think we hope to get out of this commission is to be able to provide citizens tools and information and resources that they can use to help themselves. So around this time of year, are there any trends, any things that consistently pop up that, you know, you wish people, you know, knew?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're being here in December, end of the year, colder weather happens, right? Everyone's nights are a little colder, so they hit on their heaters. I would suggest just make sure you have good smoke detectors, make sure you have a CO2 detector or a CO detector, and then make sure that your, you know, Christmas trees are away from anything flammable. it's all the normal stuff that we hear on a day-to-day basis. I know that a lady brought up the DUIs, those do go up at this time of year. There's a lot more, I'll say, depression that goes on. So we do have an increase in suicides at this time of year. So if you can reach out to friends and really pay attention to how your friends and family are to help out with that, that's another thing that we could recommend. But other than that, it's, right now, the fire season is kind of coming to an end a little bit just because we're getting some rain coming up here, and we've had rain. That doesn't mean things aren't drying out, but I'll say the way to say it here is the base layer of vegetation that's in there is still pretty wet, so it's not propagating fire too much. So, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't clean up your properties and make sure that we're having good defensible space in your properties in a leave behind or the very high fire hazard severity zones. So that would be my recommendations for the time of year now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation and for your service. I had a couple questions. One, I was wondering if it would be possible to get more of a breakdown of the EMS calls. Specifically, Rachel had mentioned DUIs. For me personally, I think a major concern is, in general, you mentioned depression and suicide, but I'm also curious of our, overdose and fentanyl, and if that's a major issue here in Encinitas. I know that that's something that's, impacting people over San Diego, Orange County, really California. So I'd love to have more breakdown of those, if that would be possible, so we could just have an idea of, what sort of EMS calls we are seeing. And then my second question is in regards to the response time. I know there's been some changes. Specifically, I live in Leucadia where we have streetscape, and there's been some concern and some chatter that roundabouts might affect response times. I know that on the 101 in Cardiff, there's been some changes there. And if you've seen that to be a hindrance to response times, or what sort of recommendations could we potentially give the general public? I know with the narrowing of the lanes and more bike lanes, if that's a hindrance at all for response times and the engineers.
Yeah, so speaking directly to streetscape, this has been a question that's been asked a few times now. So we've been pretty invested in tracking those response times, and I can tell you that the response time did increase, but by 12 seconds overall. So to me, that's a pretty negligible impact to the response time. We have done some other studies in there with how our apparatus take the roundabouts, and so far the way they've built them with the rollover curbs and given plenty of space to just go straight over them. Yeah, we have to slow down for that, but if needed, they can go right over the curb. So it's really negligible impact to the response times. As far as the road narrowing, we do obviously have to take a little bit more caution when we're going through there with bicycles, but at the end of the day, with the lights and sirens, people move over pretty well, especially here in Encinitas. So those haven't slowed our response times down at all. Did I answer all of the questions there?
The other was just if we can have a greater breakdown of the EMS calls.
Yeah, that's easy to do. I can take care of that. Yep.
Okay.
I have one more question, if that's okay. Do you get calls during this time of year for homeless folks who might be experiencing hypothermia? Does that go to your department, or Chris, I don't know if that goes to your department? And
we get calls for service, for our unhoused population. I couldn't be specific whether it's hypothermia or not, but there are times, yes, when they're cold or they're looking for blankets or a place to stay, and our men and women who show up definitely help them out and try to get them some help, either by taking them to the ER, or we do have some extra blankets on our engines and apparatus or ambulances that we can pass out.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions at this time, we will be,
I pushed this. You have requested to speak on this item thing, but I guess without a chair, that doesn't work. Yeah, I was interested in having a discussion, not necessarily tonight, but about the Fitch reports and the sort of list of recommendations that had come through there. As you know, I'm back in Leeuwenhoek, and there's quite a bit of interest in, the permanent or temporary fire station back there, and discussions about the fire engine being, up to ISO standards and things like that. You mentioned the differential response standard back there, and just like to try to have those conversations when the time is appropriate, and also just to get a sense from you of how we, this commission, can help you in being planful and preparing for your day job.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think the full Leeuwenhoek conversation would probably be much for this evening, you're right. We did give a Leeuwenhoek evacuation plan update in the council meeting, I think it was a couple months ago. And then you can also, if you're interested at the moment in between our conversation about the Leeuwenhoek, protection is on our website. You can look at the wildland fire protection page that's in there, and it gives a lot of great updates. The plan is in there. Zone Haven, which is a new tool that we're using, is in there. So you could even do some homework, I guess, to help update yourself on some of the awesome tools we've given to the citizens in the community. So, but I'm all for having that conversation. I think the city manager would probably support me in that, because I've been talking to her a lot about it too. So it's a good conversation to have.
Commissioners, are there any other questions left? If not, we will be moving to item 9B, the County of San Diego Sheriff's Department updates from Captain Lawrence.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. While Lois gets that fired up, I'd like to thank you again for your service to the city and how we can collaborate together to make our community safer. So we'll go ahead and jump on in. So if you were at the last city council meeting, I presented this to council as essentially a year-end update. So if you've seen this before, I apologize, but you will see some updated numbers if you did see this last presentation. This is again a high-level view of how Encinitas did for the year, and at the end we'll take questions to see how you want it tailored for future meetings. So we switched from the UCR reporting codes. It's FBI's standard way of reporting crimes. This year the sheriff chose to go with NIBRS. You can see the acronym there, and the reason for that is it's more intuitive and provides more information. So before it was 4 categories for violent crimes, 4 categories for property crimes under the UCR, and under NIBRS it expands to 6 categories for violent crimes and over 10 for property crimes. So it really allows us to break down what exactly is happening where and how often. And I updated most of this slide today. So currently we're experiencing a 0.5% decrease over last year from crimes against persons. That's driven mainly by our assaults from unknowns has decreased 4%. And when I say unknown, so it's parties didn't know each other before the incident took place, strangers in the street, maybe a bar type brawl or something that occurred on the street. You can see at the bottom there's a line graph related to when these incidents are occurring during the year. We had a very slow start to 2023 due to all the rain. It kept a lot of people indoors, and crime was very low during that first 3 months, and then it picks up in the summertime as expected and has continued through October, and we saw a significant decrease in November, thankfully. The assault types are broken down there on the right. One thing I did mention at the last city council meeting is our domestic violence type incidents increased this year. They were 18% of our assaults last year. This year they're up to 26%. So I mentioned that we do pair with the District Attorney's Office Family Resource Center, Family Justice Center that's in San Marcos. We provide pamphlets to all victims regardless of gender and race, to Marcy's Law. So it provides all sorts of resources related to counseling, housing, if it's necessary, for people to get out of relationships easier. It's never easy, but to give them some mechanisms to help themselves out. And again, that's in San Marcos, and we have a great relationship with them. If you want to jump to the next. So some of the strategies we did this year were reducing our bar-related assaults. The bar scene and restaurants in the downtown area of 101. It's a very popular area. It's a large tourist attraction. It's a large resident attraction. There's some wonderful places down there, and our goal this summer was to make it as safe as possible. So you can see the line graph compared the 2 years, last year and this year. We were able to reduce the amount of assaults down there. There weren't a whole lot in general, but we were able to come pretty close to a zero, which we can never eliminate crime entirely because humans are involved, but we did our best to reduce it as much as possible, and we had some great success. Some of the strategies we used were high visibility foot patrol and bike patrols. We utilized our partners over at Alcohol and Beverage Control to make sure that we were doing bar checks and undercover operations regarding over-service to keep issues related to alcohol minimized. And of course, that's where much of these incidents, the antithesis is. Next slide. So we'll jump into crimes against property. This year so far, we have an 18% decrease over 2022. All these numbers are updated, so burglaries are down 32%. Vehicle theft is down 27%, thefts from vehicles 36%, catalytic converters down 45%. Our robberies did increase, and the caveat to that is when you think of a robbery, sometimes you might think of what you see in the movies where a gun or a knife is involved and someone's getting robbed in the middle of the street. Most of our robberies in this city are related to shoplifting. So I explained what an SD's robbery is the last council meeting. That's any time a loss prevention officer attempts to stop somebody and there's any sort of altercation, it in turn becomes a robbery, regardless of the amount of force used. Even if it's just words to induce fear, it becomes a robbery. So we had 10 more of those than we did last year. Some of the strategies you can see that we used at the bottom there were continuous networking collaboration with local agencies throughout the region, catalytic converter theft and awareness, case tracking with the FBI as well as almost every agency in California. This year, several times we've had some great success breaking up catalytic converter rings that were operating out of the Los Angeles and other areas. It's a multi-million-dollar business that people are engaged in. Illicit business, and we've been able to take a significant bite out of that. Now, are they still happening? Absolutely, and so we still need to remain vigilant. Again, this is going to be the early hours when this is most affected, 3 to 6 a.m. when it's still dark. People aren't coming outside for work generally yet is when these thefts are occurring, and it's typically close to freeway exits. The perpetrators don't live in this area typically, or almost ever. From what we've seen, they come from Orange County and Los Angeles County, so if you live on the 5 corridor in a neighborhood that touches one of the freeway off-ramps, that's the best way to remain vigilant, please. And vehicles related to that are still Honda Accords, Toyota Prius, anything with 2 catalytic converters, so some of the larger heavy-duty trucks have 2 catalytic converters, so it's a 2-for-1 on those vehicles. One of the things that's really helped us out this year, I relayed to council and thank them, was our LPR program. So Encinitas deployed 7 cameras in September is when they were established. These have been nothing but successful for us. It allows us to collaborate again further with agencies that also use the flock system, and that's the system that we went with. One of the stories that I highlighted was related to a sexually violent predator who was wanted in 4 different states for essentially his MO would be to knock on a door of a stranger and force his way in and assault the person who answered the door. So we were alerted that he was in our area via license plate readers, and we were able to take him into custody before he hurt anyone in our area. And again, he was wanted in 4 different states, so our fugitive task force extradited him out of here. So as much as this community is safe, most of the time there are bad characters that come in, and this system has helped us identify those people and potentially grab them before they commit any crimes. So hopefully this next fiscal year, we'll be able to expand that program with the allowance of council, and if budgetary limits don't prohibit us, so that we can expand a greater net that will allow us to protect the city a little bit more. Thank you. So larceny theft, the last update that I gave, it was actually up 2%. Now it's down 1%. Crime does this. So here we are, down 1%. The majority of these has been from shoplifting this year. That's where when we had an increase, it was from, again, our shoplifting. And this is usually from organized theft groups that are coming down. So this isn't necessarily someone who's running in the store and stealing a beer or a candy bar or something like that. This is a group that is specifically here to target stores for specific merchandise. So one, for example, is a Dyson vacuum is very popular to steal from a Target or a Walmart. Another is pickleball paddles from sporting goods stores like Dick's Sporting Goods or REI even. And believe it or not, these are groups that come several counties away to the area stores, and not just here, but all in our region. And it's usually along the 5 or the 15 corridor. And they look to commit their crimes. And so, again, it comes down to the collaboration with other agencies region-wide, and we've had great success. But unfortunately, when we take one down, another one pops up because it's so lucrative. Another increase we've seen this year is, it says wallet or purse snatches, but essentially it's having your wallet picked out of your purse, specifically a shopping cart. So we've noticed that at Home Goods this year, Trader Joe's, there have been numerous incidents where a distraction technique is used. 2 people or 3 people are involved. One person will ask the shopper about something that's on the shelves, or something that's a high item that they try to imitate that they can't reach. The shopper distracts or is distracted from their cart, and lo and behold, their wallet is gone when they come back, and they find that charges have been made to an Apple store or some other gift card provider very quickly. And again, these are groups that are operating from another region. And so again, back to our collaboration with other agencies, which we've been very successful at, but where one gets taken down, another one fills their place. If you could advance. Our homeless outreach. So we are a member of the HOPE team, along with Stephen Gonzalez, the Homeless Solutions Outreach Manager, and any other staff that he has, along with HHSA, so our social worker named Chad. Our deputies are out in the field 24/7, and just because a deputy isn't necessarily assigned to the HOPE team doesn't mean that they don't have all the resources available to them, because they do. They just may not be as specialized as the HOPE team members, and our HOPE team is, those are deputies from our COPS team, so a community-oriented problem-solving policing group. So you can see some numbers there related to our actions this year: 525 deputy-initiated activities throughout Encinitas, specifically at the parks and beach. That number would go up if we included the entire city, but typically people are more concerned with our public spaces. We did 19 special details with the whole team, so all 4, and sometimes we'll pull in the Solana Beach cops deputies as well. So there's 2 deputies assigned to Solana Beach. We'll trade vice versa, but 19 details, and that's either a foot patrol, that's a bike patrol specific to those areas where we're contacting as many individuals as possible, making sure that the resources are provided, and if enforcement action needs to be taken, that we're doing that as well. The graph that you see in the middle, or the chart that you see in the middle, is related to the My Encinitas app. So these are all the reports that are coming in from citizens across Encinitas. So 333 related to homelessness in the calendar year so far, and this was as of the 16th, this data. So again, some of our strategies below. Collaboration with the HOPE team has been very successful. Stephen Gonzalez recently provided some numbers at a Coffee with Community. I think we've helped 81 individuals find housing this year, so that's very successful. Of course, there are individuals out there that are service resistant, and we continue to establish and grow our relationship with them, so hopefully one day they will accept those services and we can get them off the streets. The safe parking lot through the JFS has been expanded to Vista as well. So if we encounter individuals who are not from our city, but from North County along the 78 corridor, we direct them to the Vista parking lot, which is now open. We upped our parking enforcement, especially along the downtown areas where there's 10 to 6, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. parking limits, trying to usher the people out of that area. But it's the downtown area, to put it bluntly, is a great job because that's where the CRC is. So where the resources are, there you will find the people who utilize the resources. And we're really looking forward to the future use of our navigation center that council is finalizing some of the contractual issues on. And that's a facility that's in the unincorporated area of Vista. So we'll be able to use that for housing. It's very difficult to find housing at a moment's notice now. The infrastructure is so heavily impacted, even when we have individuals that say, yes, we are ready to be placed right now, there is not always a room readily available for them, and there's other limitations, whether the person has used alcohol or substance abuse within the last 30 days, whether they have pets, whether it's a couple, whether it's male or female, because there's restrictions on that. There's much more resources available for women and children than there are single men, so that comes into play as well. If you can advance. This is our e-bike safety slide. There's a lot of data here, so I'll let you reminisce on this for a moment. We had over 100 e-bike accidents in the last 4 years. Thankfully, in 2022, we were able to cut that number in half, and this was as of last Wednesday. Unfortunately, we did have 2 fatalities this year, young Brody and then another 68-year-old gentleman who passed away in September related to an e-bike collision. He was a solo rider and had trouble navigating a curb. He was not wearing a helmet, and he died, unfortunately, related to his injuries that he sustained. Our acoustic or manual bike accidents was up this year. And then you can see the monthly breakdown related to both and the use of our diversion program. It's more than 93 tickets now, but it's been very successful as we drive around at least. We see a lot more compliance, especially related to just communities to our north of Carlsbad and Oceanside, where the compliance isn't necessarily as high. So most riders that we see are wearing their helmets, wearing them properly as well as before than it was during summer. So it's great success that we've seen. We collaborate with the city to provide classes related to the education of e-bikes. It's a 3-hour class that the diversion program offers you. If you choose not to take that class, then it goes straight to the courts and you are levied fees against. But again, the diversion program has been very successful. If you can advance. Here's our general activity and DUI-related incidents. So you can see the total numbers related to 2022 and 2023. Calls for service have gone down about 800 calls. Deputy-initiated activity is also down as related to arrests are down as well. One of the notes of concern has been the DUI arrests. So it is over double related to last year. That is, I should say, because of more enforcement. Beginning of the year, we noticed that the trend was going up related to 2022. So we leveraged the Office of Traffic Safety saturation grant, as well as 2 DUI checkpoints, and really targeted the downtown area and other areas of the city related to where collisions were occurring. And so we've had great success catching people before they potentially injure someone, but it is concerning the sheer number that we've had this year. So with awareness and hopefully with awareness and no recidivism, we can drive that number down next year. And so some of the strategies related to that, like I already said, is the DUI checkpoint. We're doing social media and public outreach, not only through the sheriff's social media, but also the city and our station-specific social media. We started the Know Your Limits campaign. So this is a campaign where deputies are downtown, plain clothes, however, with items that let people know we're with the sheriff's department, a little bit more approachable when we're not in uniform. And the goal was to engage with people that were walking around downtown, offer them to take a PAS test, so the breathalyzer test, to gauge beforehand, okay, do you think you're okay to drive, versus once you get the PAS results and realize that you're not okay to drive, at least the legal limit, what that consequence might be for the person if they were to make the decision thinking that, oh, I'm okay to drive, but in all actuality, when you see the number, no, you're not, and your impairment is there. So great success with that. We had over 200 people we contacted the first night, and we plan to do some more of that as the new year starts, and before the new year specifically. And then again, the saturation patrols. So. Focuses for 2024 are listed there. Continue our homeless outreach, because that's a problem that's not going away. DUI enforcement, retail theft reduction, e-bike education and enforcement will continue, and then the initiation of the Safe Cities Project. And real quick, because I know I've taken a lot of time. So the Safe Cities Project is essentially a way that business owners, residents, and other government agencies can, two ways they can interact with this program. One is they become registered users. So they are telling us where their cameras are that are related to public-facing areas in the event a crime occurs. So an individual or a business can log into the system that we're going to be introducing to all three of the cities, but obviously we're talking about Encinitas here tonight. So Encinitas, they're able to fill out information related to where the camera is, and post-crime, we will be able to send an email to the camera operators with information related to, we're looking for events and images related to this crime, this date and time. There might be some things to look at related to, we're looking for a person wearing a red shirt, or we're looking for a yellow car. And the person is able to email us back via a link provided with the video. So it saves time and efficiency for our detectives. Instead of having to drive out and knock on doors, they can just shoot it through from their desk via email or via the system. The second facet is individuals allowing us to have live feed access to their cameras. And again, no private areas. We don't want images inside people's homes. This is related to street views, parking lot views, park views, things of that nature. And this is to provide more situational awareness for our deputies and our fire personnel for when we're responding to calls. As of right now, we rely on reporting parties, people calling 911 for all the information. And not all the information is always accurate. We find that often it's not accurate. So a live view that would be on the computer in the deputies' vehicles that they could glance at while they're responding to a call would make it safer for them, safer for the community, and we'd be able to direct resources more efficiently live time. So that is it. Open for questions.
Thanks for sharing that information, Chris. I have a couple questions. One regarding the loitering in public spaces. What are we currently doing, or better yet, not we, since I'm not going out there to deal with that. What do you all do when there are people, taking up space at park benches and along the beach, along the viewpoints? When it's clear that they aren't, they've gone beyond the point of enjoying the view to becoming something of a nuisance.
So I'll try to answer that succinctly. It's a very complicated issue. There's a lot of case law that's involved in that. So essentially, if it is a public space, there are no differences between a normal citizen that we might call and someone who's experiencing homelessness. So if the park is open and it's daylight hours, there's no difference between who's sitting on what bench. They can be there all day long.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Next question regarding retail crime. Looking at the data that you had displayed, a lot of it shoplifting and things of that nature. What relationship do you have with some of the big box retailers, or even some of the smaller retailers along the 101 that's experiencing this? Where's the line between what's the big box retailer's responsibility or the small business responsibility, and where does the Sheriff's Department pick up at? If that made any sense.
If you could just clarify when you say responsibility.
As far as, what's expected of as far as, like, say, Target. I know they have their one security guy that manages their, what's their responsibility in making sure that their property does not get stolen? And, what kind of things are they doing to minimize this, to, kind of lessen the burden on you all and, raise awareness of what's happening?
It's a great question. So we are part of what's called the San Diego Organized Retail Crime Alliance. We have actually one of your COPS deputies who's here as a board member of that, recently elected board member. So that provides us with a lot more leverage, you might say, in bringing resources to this community. With relation to the big box stores, I mean, it is their property, right? It is their responsibility. But just like we've had a difficult time hiring law enforcement officers, they also have a difficult time hiring loss prevention officers that want to do that work. It can be dangerous work. When you're intercepting someone who's leaving the store, it's not necessarily someone who wants to be stopped. So altercations can take place. People have lost their lives because of it. So, but back to their responsibility, they do the best they can with the resources they have, and likewise we do as well. So they may or may not always call us for every incident, and that's big box stores is what I'm talking about right now. What they'll do is sometimes they'll allow the person to leave and build a case on their own. They have a vast network of investigators that work for, let's say Target.
Yeah.
Target has a vast network of investigators that work nationwide, and they share information, and they have technology within their stores that help identify people that law enforcement has to follow specific rules for, but corporations don't. The device you carry in your pocket often has much more information about you than anyone knows, and because they are not governed by government codes and evidence codes like the law enforcement is, they can do different things with that data. And so they present that to us when they are ready, potentially when they have somebody identified. And then we'll work from there with the DA's office. So the smaller stores, it's much more difficult for them. I mean, it might be a mom and pop store where the owner is the person who's working the point of sale, and they don't have many resources to fight against shoplifting, and so we try to come alongside them as best we can. We have a great communication with a lot of our chambers of commerce. There are many within the city, the 101, the ECR, Cardiff. So however we can support them, we can, if that answers your question.
No, it does. Thanks for that. And last piece, it's great to see that the e-bike numbers are getting better. I know some of the things that some of the schools have been doing has, been a good help. And again, if there are any things that people can do to make sure that their kids, their young adults, their older adults are getting, into some of these e-bike training classes, I'd love to be a resource to be able to promote some of that stuff, because it does help, it does save lives, and it makes people a little bit smarter and a little bit more cognizant of what's happening out there. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about the breathalyzer test that your undercover officers are using, or they're not undercover, but do they, when they find somebody's above the legal limit, do they offer them vouchers for Lyft or Uber at that point, or so they can get home without driving?
Conversations are had in the field. We don't have vouchers that we can provide for them. And it's still their responsibility to get home safely. We have offered rides home, but typically we're not. And during those operations, individuals are contacted in large groups, and we found, thankfully, that most of them do have designated drivers amongst them. But with the rideshare application so prevalent now, no, to answer your question, there isn't a resource for vouchers that we have.
If somebody was actually found to be way above the legal limit, is there anything you can do to dissuade them? And I understand we're putting the responsibility back on them to get home safely.
Right.
But they're obviously not necessarily making good decisions at that point.
Sure. So way over is a little subjective. If we see someone who's way over, they're probably going to be displaying some behavior where they might need to come with us for the night and sober up, and we can make that happen. But if it's someone who is still maintaining, let's say, they're able to a steady gait, they're able to handle themselves, not a boisterous or argumentative or assaultive behavior. Yeah, a firm conversation and a way to get them off the street safely and home is had. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chris. I gleaned from your talk, maybe incorrectly, but you're talking about DUIs, reducing them, and paying attention to where they're happening. Is there a particular area that you can describe that they're actually happening? And when you say that, are you just describing where people are getting drunk, and so you're sort of triaging that, like downtown area?
So we go based off of where the collisions actually occur.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of them are the major arteries. I mean,
Okay.
it's typically not a neighborhood. You know, it's going to be Encinitas Boulevard, it's going to be North El Camino Real, the 101, Lucadia. Anywhere people use an artery to get around, that's where the collisions are going to be. And that's where we find our DUIs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I don't have the chart in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But we did pull data related to where people were coming from. And that's only as good as what they tell us. There's nothing that we can do to coerce them to tell us where they're coming from. They don't have to answer that question during the evaluation. 77%, in fact, didn't answer that question for where they were coming from. But the majority were from local restaurants, not bars, and residences. So either their own residence or they're coming from a party type engagement. So that's where most of our DUIs were coming from that did report to us.
And I can assume that they're happening in the evening, right?
Most are in the evening,
Yeah,
yes.
of course. And then just a final question in regard to the camera system, where you're relying on the residents to provide, and that, like, is there a gross number of cameras that we know that are available to your department at this time, and a breakdown between live stream and the other way? Just gross numbers in general?
I don't have those numbers. Yeah, live stream, there are some city-operated cameras that we do have access to. It's limited. But after the fact cameras, we don't have access to any directly. Those are all related to a relationship that we have with the public. You know, and it's going to be either a deputy or a detective knocking on someone's door and saying, "Can we have your video footage?" Because it's their information. They own it. We can't just come in and take it. So we try to have a friendly, cordial conversation and let them know, "Hey, we're investigating a crime that affects your neighborhood or your community. Can we have that information?" But without a search warrant, there's nothing that compels us to give us.
Yeah, maybe I gleaned incorrectly, but people were registering that they actually had these and
So-
they were available, or is that a future service that you're talking about?
Future service. So we're going to
That's
start
future.
that after the first of the year when people have their, they're not focused on the holidays anymore. You know,
Got it.
we don't promote it now, and we just end up being white noise with everything that's going on in people's lives. So we're going to wait till after the first of the year and go forward with that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Captain, you were talking, it's sort of a dovetail to what he asked. It's called the Safe Cities Project, is that correct?
Correct.
And where are we right now with that?
So it is a pilot program currently that started in, let me rephrase that. It was a pilot program that started in Lemon Grove. That's where we started it. We had great success with it. Community has a tendency to have some violent incidents that occur, and so we brought it to them first. There's some gang issues that they have in that community, and it helped our teams that investigate violent crime. So now, Santee and Poway just went online just within the last month or two. They did it October, so they have limited success so far, trying to get it out to the community, trying to get people to sign up for it. And that's always the challenge with anything that we do, is trying to get cooperation through it. So we'll be the 4th, 5th, and 6th cities here to do it.
Okay. And where would you like to be with that program, and what can the city or this commission do to help you get there?
Public awareness, help us get it out there, help us let people know that it's a good thing that's going to help them out. It's something that, you know, as we talk about with the fire department, response times and efficiency and efficacy, that's where this program helps us out. It keeps our investigators focused. We don't lose time out in the field driving around again to, revisit a scene, stand at the nearby the location where something occurred and do a 360-degree turn and try to identify where every camera is hanging under a home's eave or on the side of a business. This would allow us to just log into essentially a Google Map overlay, and it will show icons on a map where the cameras are that are available to us. Now, in the initial steps, will we still have to go out in the field? Absolutely. But hopefully someday we'll get to the point where that's not necessary and it saves a lot of time and resources. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Hope team and dig in a bit more there. But before we do that, the question burning on my mind is, where is the pickleball paddle ring centered?
Dick's Sporting Goods. They love Dick's Sporting Goods. And they're, most of these come out of Los Angeles. Most of these groups come out of LA. Yep.
I was thinking Palm Springs or something, but
Yeah. That may be where they're reselling it.
okay. For the Hope team, maybe we can go back and pull up that. Yeah, thank you. So you talk about the 525 deputy-initiated activities. Yeah, I don't expect you to have real numbers, but what are we talking about there? Is this, the Hope deputies talking to homeless folks proactively? Is this, homeless person on homeless person violence that it's a police response to? They're reporting crimes themselves? What kind of incidents are we talking about here?
So, great question. Deputy initiated activities are just that. So the deputy is initiating the contact. So it's typically someone that they're driving by and they see that they are someone who appears to be experiencing homelessness, and they're very experienced to pick that out as related to any other individual. And that doesn't mean that there's 525 different individuals within the city. Many of these individuals are contacted over and over and over again until, again, that relationship is formed where we can get them the services they want. For instance, the first contact might be, hey, you look to be new in town. Are you new? Where are you from? Get their biographical information, try to hear their story. Second part, offer them resources. Many of the times it's no thanks, not interested. And sometimes that's related to a trust issue, lack of trust in law enforcement. And so if they're not violating any crimes at the time, we leave them be. We report back to Stephen Gonzalez or HHSA social workers. And
Chad Ryan.
Yep, Chad, or whoever else might be on his team. And they try to go out and make additional follow-ups, and we may or may not go back out with them just to make sure that things are safe and things are proceeding as they should. And then potentially we can drop off from that contact and then just let the social workers and case managers handle it until that person accepts resources or they move on to another area.
So I'm part of that response team. I work out of St. Andrews on the Saturday morning programs and part of the HMIS system from the regional task force. And so Chad and I work very closely together. Stephen, a little bit less so because the city isn't part of the trust network, and so we're limited in what we can share with them as well as the cops deputies. But you talked a little bit about people willing to get help. And I know that I've talked to some of the city council members, and there's a perception that most of the folks that are experiencing homelessness don't want help. And I know that the folks that we serve, which is the majority of people who are living on the streets or in their car, would love housing. They can't afford it. And in some cases, there are other barriers, most frequently mental health issues or substance abuse issues. when the police are having these interactions, it's often some of the most troubled cases. And my son was one of those. He has schizophrenia and had a psychotic break this winter and spring. And as he was spiraling down, he was having a medication change supervised with a psychiatrist that went wrong. And his mother and I could see symptoms and signs and trouble. And we reached out repeatedly to the system because I'm reasonably well plugged in. We requested PERT teams. We had deputies respond to specific incidents. And there was nothing we could do to stop him falling. And it wasn't until he'd had multiple ER visits, ICU visits, multiple arrests, that he was brought in on 5150 and eventually found medication that's working. And he's out of the hospital now and doing reasonably well, making positive steps. But I'm interested in how we as a community can catch people on the way down, can better coordinate, move past these barriers where I can't tell Deputy Wells about something because I got it out of the HMIS system, or I'm just wondering how we as a community can tackle this more effectively, and your thoughts on that.
Legislative change. Laws are what hinder us, and that's what we operate under, is whatever laws are on the books. And if laws don't allow us to have that information, then that's what needs to change if that's what communities want, is for us to have that information. Now, we'll just leave it at that. Laws need to change. So,
what about on the training side, right? There are Hope Team deputies that are very well attuned and deeply understanding of the situation. There's a bigger diversity of sort of competencies. I don't mean that in a professional sense, but just attitudes and awareness and ability to have effective, positive interactions with folks that are in crisis. How do we go about the training side of this so that we can, raise the level up so that people that are having these interactions are generally constructive and collaborative?
So you're talking about interactions with specifically law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. So the training, we've been doing this for over a decade, strategic communication training. Deputies are required to go through it in the academy, and then they have continual professional training. Deputies are humans just like everyone else, and we have good days and bad days, and there may be times where we're unnecessarily short with someone or whatnot, and so those occurrences happen. You have my apologies. But on the other side is when we are contacting these individuals in crisis, it may not be their best day either, and their best communication efforts that are going forward as well. And so we try to diffuse the situation the best we can. And sometimes bad things happen, but we try the best we can to avoid those. No deputy wants to use force on anyone because it's always inherently dangerous. And any time that we are in a fight, there's always at least one gun in a fight, and no one wants to be fighting with a gun. So does that answer your question? Training is continuous, and we try to do the best we can. But again, it's as much as it's law enforcement's responsibility, the other party has responsibility as well.
Right. when there's mental illness and a crisis involved, I think we need to rely on those people that aren't in the mental health crisis to be able to, de-escalate and there are definitely police officer personality types that tend to do that very, very well on their good days and their bad days, and certain other types that, they walk into us, they're the fourth person onto the scene and they need to take charge. I don't know, it's an awareness thing, I think, and I'm just wondering how we build that collaboration, that sense of teamwork to diffuse, de-escalate, and collaborate to get people into the help they need.
Yeah, that's a very tough issue. But yes, we continue to train. That is something that we are involved in more and more as individuals' mental health crisis, and it's not necessarily always a law enforcement issue. So that's why we've partnered with PERT and we've partnered with MCRT, and those resources are available. And it may take a family member who's calling in to step back for a moment and think which number that they're going to call for assistance. So I don't want to be too defensive, so I'll leave my I'll leave my communication there, but just with one last caveat. As difficult as it is, so you yourself stated that you have a family member, and so even having lived with someone for so long, you still encounter situations where you can't diffuse them and you can't make the situation safe. It's that much more difficult for us to show up maybe for the first time and try to do that. So again, it's a very difficult and very complex situation and issue that we deal with. So.
It absolutely is. And I think that one of the things, you brought up the MCRTs, and they're an important resource that we have in these kinds of situations. But they're a diversion resource, right? They're trying to avoid 5150s. It's not necessarily trying to catch people on the way down and help them before they're at rock bottom. Unfortunately, right, the 5150 standard is what it is. And if adults don't want help, it's impossible for us to force it on them. But how can we as a community collaborate to avoid them having to hit rock bottom before we pick them up?
So again, that's a great question. That's back on family and friends who may be interacting with the individual on a daily basis and utilizing these resources sooner than later. Unfortunately, sometimes we hear when the really traumatic, horrendous situations happen and maybe someone loses their life, that we hear after the fact, oh, if I would have only done something, I saw them going through the situation and I should have called sooner. So those are the situations where we need to call sooner and utilize the resources that are available. But another piece of that situation is we don't have enough people that want to do that job yet. We need more community members that are willing to be the MCRT clinicians, the PERT clinicians, and things like that. It's just like I can't run out on the street and grab another deputy and say, you're a deputy now. The same thing we can't do with mental health workers. And so we need more of our community members that are willing to do that work. It's very difficult work. It's very draining work. It's hard. So when we can improve that as well as a collaborative approach from the whole community, that's when we'll be able to start solving some of these problems.
I'd like to just also add real quick, sorry. As a firefighter, I used to be on the floor, and we would respond to, homeless or unhoused incidents as well, and we would show up with the sheriff's already on scene dealing with an individual, and we would show up as the fire department, and it would turn from an angry conversation to, oh, the fire department's here, we love you guys. So sometimes it's not necessarily the sheriffs and their ability to de-escalate things. It's usually, it can be sometimes just the fact that they have a badge on, right? There's a little bit of a bias, and we've been able to show up and see how great our sheriffs are and how well they do try to de-escalate things, and then we show up and it's like, oh, yay, the fire department. So we get to see that perspective a little bit, and sometimes we feel bad for these guys sometimes, just sometimes. But the other thing is we're always called to, on the reactionary side, right? We don't get to be there in the beginning and try to de-escalate or give them the support or resources they need in the very beginning. We're usually there, half hour after the fall, as you put it, has already happened. And so we're already behind the 8 ball when we get there. And I think that's where, Captain Lawrence suggesting we really get those resources and support out early as best we can is really going to help that back end of these incidents happen. So.
It's green and red now flashing, so, I mean, it's very Christmassy, but I don't think that's, I don't know that it's working. But I'm just gonna go ahead. So I can empathize with both sides of this. On my day job, I am a fire captain in Orange County, Garden Grove area, and we do have a program actually that's really, that's through PD. It's called Be Well. And it's for people that are in a mental health crisis. Instead of, we call out Be Well, they're dispatched to the scene, and they have mental health care first responders, so to speak. As I've been a paramedic for 23 years, I still don't have the tools they have to deal with somebody that is autistic or schizophrenic. I don't have that type of training. CPR, I got all day, but some of these other things, I just don't have the training for. But Be Well does a really good job, and instead of taking them to an ER, which can be very anxiety-provoking for, I think, a lot of patients, right? Especially our mental health patients and customers, so to speak. And I will say, post-COVID, it's got to be at least 30% higher, right? That and our addiction, and it's just everything's increased in that way. But this program's been really good, and they take them directly to a quiet place where they can talk to a mental health professional. And I do have the contacts, and I think it might be something that we might be able to do. And instead of, taking them and putting them on a hold and then ultimately getting them a referral to go talk to somebody, they can talk to somebody immediately in a safe environment. And maybe that could help to intersect them, or get them before they spiral. It's a complicated thing, but they also deal with people with addiction as well. So that's just something I kind of wanted to interject with Be Well. Also, too, just on the flip side of it, I think it's important when we're talking about mental health also to, we have known with PTSD, with our first responders, right, our police and fire both, that we need to take care of our own also in that way. And when we have our own responses from being in this field for so long, and we haven't dealt with those or have the resources for us, we are then shorter with our customers or don't have the empathy and compassion, right? Because our own stuff is triggered, right? So I guess my question is, what do we have for our providers in a mental health, like that we provide for them?
Is that directed towards me, Josh, or both?
I mean, I guess technically it would be towards you, but yeah, really both. I mean, because the concern would be both sides.
Sure. So the Sheriff's Department contracts with the Counseling Team International, internationally recognized group for wellness. That resource is free to all of our employees, their family, spouses, children, you name it. We also have several programs that the department puts on itself. So most of our facilities, if they don't already, they are working on a wellness room, for lack of a better term, just a place where they can take a moment to decompress, de-stress, and get back to equilibrium. So before they go back out in the field. So we have one in our station as well here at North Coastal. There's several other programs. I mean, there's actually a lot of programs that the Sheriff's Department leverages, but Counseling Team International is our primary. There's other providers that we have related to specific types of issues or concerns that an individual may have. But yeah, so we've been providing those services for at least the last 2 decades. Yeah.
Currently for the fire department, we have First Alarm Wellness, which is the mental health clinicians that they can come in after a significant event, or if anything triggers someone, they can call and they can come either straight to the fire station, or we can set up a meeting somewhere else. I will say, and maybe this will be my plug for the health and wellness programs for us, is I was just up with a whole bunch of OCFA chiefs and San Diego fire chiefs, all throughout Southern California, actually. But I really feel like we're losing this war when it comes to cancer prevention, mental health. We've had 3 firefighter suicides in the last 3 weeks. So we keep having to wear these black shrouds over our badges, and we got to do something about it. So we're actually meeting with San Diego City Fire Department and their health and wellness division. They're going to come up and basically go through our whole program and see what needs to be better, and they're pretty progressive. They gave a great presentation to us as fire chiefs, and we're going to turn this thing upside down and see what we need to do with it. So, we do have some programs out there that have shown to be working, but again, I feel like we're losing this battle. So we're going to kind of revamp and see how we can improve it. So. Oh yeah, it wasn't 3 from Encinitas. I'm sorry, it's 3 within San Diego County. So that's a good clarification. It's hard though, and Commissioner Andrade, I think you understand that it's still a small world, right? We know a lot of firefighters around, so it hits us just the same as it would be our own. But yeah, we're definitely going to improve the programs that we have. So.
Are you done, Lauren? Are you good?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So one, I want to start by similarly just saying thank you for your service and your team's service. I am someone who has lived in big cities, and so I've always felt extremely safe in Encinitas, but seeing the statistics that you showed today and just seeing the decline, just want to commend you and your team on the incredible work that you're doing here in Encinitas. And with that, it's, just this whole conversation, I just can't help keep thinking of prevention is so important, and public awareness and public education. And I feel like I've learned just from hearing you talking about the wallet snatching. I'm someone that I shop and I leave my phone right there in my shopping cart, and that has everything in it. And I don't think of someone's going to ask me to help them get something off a shelf while somebody else steals something. The DUI campaign, I think it's incredible that we are doing the Know Your Limits campaign, and that's an educational event. Hearing about safe cities, all of these things, I don't think I would learn about if I wasn't sitting in this seat. And unfortunately, we don't have all of Encinitas sitting here in this room. And so I'm curious of what is our current public safety awareness campaign, if there's social media. I follow the city of Encinitas. I don't follow San Diego Sheriff's, but I will. But would it be your recommendation that that is something that we should prioritize, is how perhaps it's an Encinitas public health and safety Instagram and social media. I know people follow those things, but getting the word out to me is something that I think, education, and how do we fix these things, whether it's, it's how do we prevent them rather than ending up in a situation with all of these unintended consequences. So that would be my first question, is just, is there a public education that's currently happening, and perhaps we just need to spread that word more, or is that something that you think needs to be created?
Thank you. That's a great question. Yes, it is occurring now. Could it be better? Absolutely. We're always working on trying to improve the word that gets out there. Most of it is through our San Diego Sheriff Instagram, Twitter. So that's where most of this information is. We do a lot of on-the-street outreach as well. So for instance, related to the wallet and purse issue, we've had our crime prevention teams set up their tables right in front of the store and talk to individuals while they're coming in and out of the store and shopping, just to get the word out. We've had our senior volunteer patrols walking through the retail parking lots, reminding people, hey, be careful while you're shopping during the holiday season. Don't leave nice things in the car back seat where it's readily visible. Put it in your trunk. Don't put it in your trunk when people are watching you and then walk back into the store. Maybe go to a different location. So we get busy with our lives, and so it's hard. Thankfully we're in a community where we don't necessarily have to think about that all the time, but crime still exists everywhere, and we'll never be able to reduce it to a zero, but the best we can via the outreach is great. So to have another place for people to look for social media, I don't know if that would be the most effective way. Perhaps it would just be directing people to the resources that already exist. Because again, just another addition to your feed to scroll through may or may not be beneficial. I'm not a huge social media person. I don't know, again, the results where that would take. We could try it. Maybe that's a discussion on the work plan that gets worked out, what your expertise, the 7 of you coming together, come up with, and we can focus on something like that.
Okay, yeah, I, as an Encinitas resident, use the term the bubble a lot, so following San Diego sheriffs isn't something that I would think to do, but if there was an Encinitas specific, this is what to do, that just is something that came to mind. My other question is, you mentioned the LPR cameras, and specifically when the alert went out that there was, a sexual assailant that was in the community. Is that something that, in this, I get, could be, could hinder your job, but is that an alert that goes out? Similarly, if there's an Amber Alert, like as a female in this community, if that was somewhere, I would like to know where to find, like, there is an assailant in the community right now, use precaution when answering your door or something like that.
So much of that data is confidential and private. However, if we believe that there was an instance that people needed to know about because we couldn't handle it quickly and effectively before somebody was injured, yes, you would see that information out in the public. This specific incident, I can't speak to it much more, but we were able to get on that right away and make sure that no one was at risk more than they already were with just the person passing through any other city, if that makes sense. But again, that data is very protected for good reason. It could be used conversely, or a way that's not productive for all of our freedom and civil liberties out here. So it's, again, it's very, very restricted on who gets access to that data, who sees it, and what kind of alerts go out.
Got it. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a general, take precaution for the next hour sort of.
Sure.
Sometimes the helicopters go out and
Right.
we can't really hear what they're saying, but it's a little terrifying. And then the last thing I just want to end on is I'm really glad that Lauren brought this up about the wellness and, for yourselves as first responders and on the first line, it's like prioritizing that. My husband's also Orange County Fire, and I am extremely proud of their organization for what they do. And, but I'm also aware it's the boys club, and sometimes it's a lot harder to change that stigma. And so to hear you say, Chief, that, it's a priority for you to bring that to Encinitas and to speak, about the need for the progressive and prioritizing wellness really makes me feel good about our Encinitas firefighters and the access that they're going to have to take care of themselves. And I also think that's something, if we can, it's like continue to just work with the two of you and find out what resources you need, that is what's going to benefit our community more than anything. So I think we're here to serve the community at large, but also to figure out how do we serve you so that those that you work with are able to take care of the rest of us. So look forward to learning more.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Do we have time for another question?
So I don't know if folks are aware of the Blue Envelope program, the new program from the county. It's brand new, so maybe, Captain, would you like to talk about that? Because my question about the blue, if you could talk about it first,
It's a great question. The blue envelope is relatively new. It has been out for probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months now. It's a way to alert law enforcement that you may have a different way other than just mere speech to communicate, or that your speech that you do have may just be in a manner that someone may not be used to. And so it alerts law enforcement to the potential necessity to find another way to communicate, whether that be ASL or writing a conversation down, but it also gives us the indication that we may need to use more patience in a situation. So that's essentially the general overview of that program. And as the commissioner mentioned, blue envelope, it is based on the logo of a blue envelope. And so we have many different items of interest that you can put a sticker on your car. You can use a keychain, a lanyard, actually carry a blue envelope with your a copy of your driver's license, insurance, registration, so that during potentially a traffic enforcement stop, you can hand that out, and that's right in the law enforcement officer's face that, oh, okay, this is an individual that may require different techniques of communication, and we'll go about from there. So that's been, the sheriff has talked about that with multiple news agencies. There's been numerous social media and newspaper articles. So if you haven't seen it, again, it's back to the point of there's so much information, avenues out there. Which one do we prescribe to? We can't get the information out to everybody, but as many people as we can. And if anyone's interested in any of that literature, again, it's on our websites, and then you can come into the station and get some of those items. So.
My question is related to, so that can be applied to folks who are neurotypical, who have hearing deficits, might be blind, might be disabled in some other way. And to hit Dan's point about somebody who has a mental illness, that is a disability, mental illness, and substance use. And I think the society at large has had a tough time coming around to seeing substance use disorder as a disability, but in my mind, it definitely is. So I can see this as a way to prevent an escalation when a police officer approaches somebody. This is just to use in a vehicle, though. So they can actually use it carried around in another format? I'm asking because I don't know that.
Yes, Commissioner, that's it can be used at any time. Again, back to a lanyard, a keychain,
Okay.
A pin, a button, a sticker. It can be placed anywhere. A backpack, a briefcase. We have the wristbands that you can wear that are blue, that say blue envelope. So we've come up with a myriad of options. So.
Awesome. That's great. So how do members of the community or family members apply for that? What kind of documentation do they have to show so that they can get this and be protected in those kind of situations where, they may have a diabetic condition that's causing them to not be clear in their thinking. So when a police officer addresses them, they may seem like they're intoxicated in some other way. And I know we've had that situation here happen in Encinitas. So how do community members apply for this?
It's a great question. There's no application needed. We don't take anyone's information. You just come into the station and request the items or information about it, and it's free to everyone. And again, just to give it a broad general sense, anyone with a disability or some sort of condition that would cause different communication to be needed. So that's the goal. Anything that would affect our communication with somebody outside the norm.
That'd be great. I'd love to see that on our city website. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions at this time, we will be moving forward to item 10A, Public Health and Safety Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Per Municipal Code, Chapter 2.34.30, the Public Health and Safety Commission shall elect a chair and vice chair each year to preside over the business of the commission for a one-year term. No formal action can be taken at this meeting, but commissioners may ask questions regarding the agenda item. At this time, do we have any speaker slips for this item?
Yes, we have one speaker, Rachel Graves.
Thanks for that fascinating discussion. Wow, that was a lot. And as an aside, this wasn't what I came to talk about, Mr. Morton. You can look on the calls for service and see all kinds of interesting information. Like, I didn't really know about it until more recently, but there was a DUI the other day, like 3 p.m. at the high school, like right at the high school. And then another one was like by someone's home, and he was like a repeat offender of that. So it's actually kind of fascinating. And also, Dan, I'm not sure how you would be able to use this information for the purposes that you were discussing, but there were also in there a couple of people who had been arrested that don't have home addresses, and they've been arrested. One was for like domestic violence of someone who, and the person's been arrested for that like 10 or 12 times in the last couple of years. And that person maybe needs help. And I don't know how we would even know about that. I don't have I wouldn't have known, and I wouldn't know who to contact. And another person that was like more drunk in public that had happened like 10 to 15 times in the last couple of years. So I don't know how to tie all that information into getting help for those people that clearly need help. So anyway, that was an aside. And so I just, again, wanted to thank you all for serving on this committee. I'm eager to see that we hopefully focus on public health and safety. I'm a little concerned because Councilwoman Hinsey at the School District Liaison Committee meeting in October, she said that this was going to be just an extension of the Equity Committee. And I really hope that residents and you guys weren't tricked into something thinking it was public health and safety, but it's kind of going to be a costume or something. I don't know, but I'm pretty concerned about that. And I hope that doesn't end up being what it is. So I do have some recommendations, though, for the annual work list, but I think we talked about most of them just now. The vagrants at the beaches and parks. I think we need our beaches and parks to be safe, and I realize there's limitations for law enforcement, but a lot of the people there are harassing elderly and disabled people. They're smoking, they're drinking, they are violating laws, and we need to keep those areas safe for people so that my mom can go to the beach in her town that she's lived in forever. Wildfire evacuation plan. I'm excited that we're working on that. And Dan, we're watching you. Lebanon has their eyes on you. We want you to help us. Safe sidewalks and bicycling, e-bikes. I think that's really important too. And the sidewalks downtown are going to be an issue at next council meeting with the restaurants. And I just want to just remind everyone that if this commission does turn into something else, we need to remember Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that act tells us that it's illegal to discriminate during hiring processes. Please don't repeat the errors of the Equity Committee, and don't make recommendations to the city asking them to violate the civil rights of job applicants. Thank you.
There are no further speakers.
Thank you. Commissioners, you may begin your discussions and questions.
Are we tabling this till a future meeting?
We can discuss, we just can't take action.
I'm good waiting.
Okay, if all of the commissioners are in agreement, we will move on to agenda item 10B, Public Health and Safety Commission Annual Work Plan. To accomplish the commission duties, commissioners develop a work plan annually to use a tool that provides structure, defines goals, and tracks progress. The commission work plan will be used to formulate goals, intended outcomes, timelines, fiscal impacts, and identifies commissioner involvement. The commissioners may provide ideas, suggestions, comments, but no official direction at the time. Staff will bring back the work plan at the future meeting to review and approve.
We have one speaker on this item, Rachel Grace. Shh, she would like to skip. No further speakers.
Thank you. So at this time, there can be commissioner discussion. Staff will take back all of the notes and comments provided to prepare a draft of the work plan.
All right, so the work plan, I've been doodling down some notes of things that I think I would like to see, kind of based on some of the communication that we've had today. I know, Lord knows, we don't need any more additional social media feeds or anything of that nature, but I think based on this conversation, I think there is a need to be able to get some of this content out, such as the blue envelope information, PERT MCRT information, safe cities. So is there a way, can we put like a quarterly newsletter or quarterly page that can go up on the city's SharePoint or webpage or Instagram or something? Would that be work plan notable?
So yes, that could be work plan notable where commissioners can provide recommendations on what you would like to see in the newsletter for staff to work on.
All right, perfect.
I jotted down some notes too, and a thought that I had, being that we're meeting quarterly, would be perhaps to create a couple ad hoc committees to work deeper on some issues. To me, I think the most pertinent is community outreach, doing a survey to identify what the public actually wants to prioritize and wants us to focus on, work with our public entities that are already existing to see how we can best support them and what they think their biggest concerns are. So, kind of do a robust survey to figure out, what should we actually be prioritizing. I think we all have some sort of an idea, and it's what we're hearing from folks. But I think so. Community outreach, I think, would be one ad hoc, which then would also go into public awareness. The second that I would propose creating would be a mental health and addiction ad hoc, which would focus again on education, but also prevention and resources that are available. A ad hoc committee that's focused on supporting our unhoused as well as those that are impacted. So that would be our businesses, our communities. There's a number of nonprofits that are already working this space. And then, again, it's public health entities. How do we work with the existing entities to investigate, study, and work with them to make any recommendations for needed improvements? So I think that is what I would propose is, kind of creating some ad hoc committees that we can do the work in between the quarters and then report back to the city some recommendations and go from there.
I'd say being mindful of Brown Act, how would those, if we were to do these ad hoc committees, how would that work?
I will defer your question to City Clerk Kathy Hollywood regarding ad hocs.
It's like we're all in sync here because that's exactly what I came over to talk to her about. If you create an ad hoc committee that's going to meet, we would publish the agenda and would take notes and ask people to be able to come and speak. So I like the idea of the ad hoc committees. I think it's great. We'll just have to make sure we understand when the group is meeting.
There's people here that have never participated in this kind of forum, right? So don't really understand about this. If I wanted to meet with Marlon and just have a discussion with him about, how we would take the information that the sheriff's putting out pretty much on a daily basis on crime prevention and getting it in somehow to the citizens in our community, if I meet with him and just have a cup of coffee with him, is that an issue?
So what you want to make sure is that your deliberations are during this meeting. And so if you were to meet with Marlon, you would have to be careful about talking to other folks on the commission, either directly or indirectly. And what I mean by indirectly is that then Marlon speaks to somebody else who then speaks to somebody else. And that's called a serial meeting. And the fact that you have the question, I will send you some information about the Brown Act that very clearly talks about that, so you can feel more comfortable about the discussion that you might have with another commission member.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, I don't want to get myself in trouble or, get you in trouble or anybody else. I think that's important.
One goal of every commission is to not get me in trouble. That is, thank you for that. So, but yeah, it is very complicated if you've never been on a commission, and the state of California has some very strict rules, but they're actually very easy to follow and understand. So I'll make sure we send something out to you, all of you. Oh, that would also, the city clerk just reminded me, that also includes, you might know, took note of when I communicated with each of you, I asked you not to send an email to all of you. It's the same thing via email in terms of serial meetings, that we don't want that to occur.
Are the committees ad hoc or time-limited committees? And who can comprise an ad hoc? Is it only the commissioners or can members of the public?
So the ad hoc committees would be members of this commission, and then the public could participate in a manner that they do during any public meeting, that they can speak regarding the conversation, regarding the ideas, suggest ideas, et cetera.
And is it time limited, the ad hoc?
What do you mean by time limited?
Well, do they span the whole year, or is it just when we're, for example, when we develop a work plan, because we're only meeting quarterly, it's going to be really slow to get anything done, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think you have a couple of, so the idea of an ad hoc committee is always good. I think there's a time limit is always a good thing, because then there's a specific beginning, middle, and end. Another option that you could have, particularly in light of our error on our agenda, is that we could agree to have a special meeting. When we created the commission, we weren't quite sure. It's actually very difficult to get this room because there's regular planning commission, council, all of that. But it is possible for us to schedule a series of special meetings that could work for all or most of the commission. If you think that that would be helpful, we're certainly able to do that to kind of get you going and get some movement. That's also possible as well.
Yeah, I'd like to see that happen, because I think the year goes so fast when you're only meeting quarterly and you don't have enough time to really get into meat of things. And if we want the community to know what we're doing and be part of the planning process so they can make comments, I would suggest that we have those special meetings if possible.
Is the quarterly set in stone, or can the commission elect to have special meetings every month?
So when the council adopted the framework for the commission, it was listed as quarterly. It's no different than when the council has meetings. We sometimes have special meetings. Even if we meet earlier than 6 p.m., it's a special meeting for the city council. So we can do that. One thing I would say about this group of extraordinary individuals is that it is hard to find a time that works for everyone. So you may need to make some compromises that some of you might not be able to make every special meeting, but we can certainly try for some additional dates and schedule something for January or February if that feels like that could work well for you.
And since there are 7 of us, we would need 4 for a quorum.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And based on your experience, given that this body is going to meet quarterly, and hopefully we are able to accomplish some things, what recommendations do you have for a work plan that could actually result in actual accomplishments being done?
So one of the questions that I asked all of you is to think about, after a year on the commission, what would feel like success? What would feel like something that you felt particularly proud of achieving? What's nice about this commission, a little different than, let's say, Planning Commission, which has a very prescribed group of items that are being considered. We have a bit of a blank slate. We've brought together all of our staff members in terms of the department heads and the departments and how we might be able to inform the committee and be able to give commission and be able to give you interest and ideas. You all come from very unique and individual backgrounds. And so maybe what we do is try to see if there's an interest. I think you've all had a chance to look at some of the materials that we gave you in advance to see some of the work that the city staff is already doing and what some of our other commissions are doing. But I would guess that you each have something that seems, I mean, even hearing all of you this evening, you can see that each of you have a little different, something that you feel passionate about. So we could start with Lois and I providing some information and seeing where there could be some interest. And also we would take a look at calendars to see if we might be able to schedule some additional time. Even the time of this meeting, we had some folks that really preferred something earlier than 4. Some people had ideas of later than 4, so we might be able to change that up a bit as well.
So from my perspective, some of the topics that are of most interest, the collaborative approach to homelessness. I was a little disappointed to hear that it sounded like it was both sides in the conversation I was having with the captain, but my intention is not to be adversarial with the police. It's very much to be collaborative. The police have an incredibly hard job, and I'm very appreciative that we have them. But the homeless response is something that crosses a bunch of boundaries, right? We've got a city staffer. We know that homelessness is a housing problem, so how we choose to deploy the public housing resources is one of the biggest levers we have in addressing homelessness. There's also, of course, the huge overlap with mental health issues, with substance abuse issues, if that's not fully covered by mental health issues. And we have county resources, right? Both the Office of Homeless Solutions and the Department of Behavioral Health, and trying to bring all of those to bear on the problem is challenging. And I'm not 100% sure that this forum is the way to roll up our sleeves and do it, but maybe we can have reporting back through here on progress, setting targets, I don't know exactly how that is going to work most effectively, but I know that the City Council cares about it, I know that the public cares about it, and I certainly know that the people who are experiencing homelessness care about it.
I'll just add that I can't think of another ad hoc committee, so the 3 that you recommend is certainly a great place to start. And I'll just make the recommendation if we need it, just, a special committee starting in monthly, starting in January, for each of those, if we can do that, so.
With Rachel here, I just wanted to also make sure that we keep wildfire safety and rural fire response and Fitch plans in the agenda?
Olivenhain is watching. No, it's a real thing. Yeah. No, I remember the big fire where a big piece of ember fell, and I was like, yeah, it's time for us to go. Yeah. So, no, it's a real thing.
And I would feel that the community outreach sort of would read that. Would you recommend a different ad hoc to make sure Olievenhain's being heard?
If there's like point of order, and I think maybe once we have a chair, I just know Lauren has had her light on for a while there, but I think everyone else can't see her because she's down that way. So I just don't know what's the best way for us to not be jumping around.
Sorry. Yeah, no, and I am one of the people that is new to this whole program, so I do appreciate any like things you send to him, send them to me too, because I want to educate myself as well. And maybe this is inappropriate to ask, but I kind of want to ask the folks over here that I think know their organizations best what they think success would look like from this committee after a year, as far as what are things that we can help you do, maybe like the top 2 things to help you feel successful, and that this commission has helped you to progress your departments.
Oh, I want you guys to be real careful in answering. No, just kidding.
I think, the top 2 is going to be hard for me. We have Olievenhain, which is one of my number 1 priorities, right? We have a Fitch evacuation plan that I adjusted and gave a presentation to the council about, working very closely with the Olievenhain Fire Safe Council and the community. But there are some other needs in that community with vegetation management and looking at the fire station in a type 1 or a fire engine instead of a patrol out there, personnel, stuff like that. I think those are long-term goals that probably at the end of the year is not going to be accomplished, but at least having a plan to maybe get there would be a good goal. And then any kind of, you guys heard my spiel on the cancer prevention and mental health, but as far as the community goes, we do have a lot of developments coming in, some mid to high-rise developments that we need to do extra training for. We have a 3-person fire truck instead of a 4-person fire truck, which having some different developments like that, we're looking at for the NFPA standards and the requirements that we have. So a lot of it is planning and long-term budgeting for us and using grants. I hope that helps.
I would add to that too, is that there's a couple of things that are already happening that overlap. So for example, the fire department is doing a lot of work with the Olievenhain Fire Safe Council. Those meetings are public, et cetera. So maybe one thing that I might suggest that we could give so that you have it in your packet, in addition to the Brown Act rules and all the things the state makes us do, maybe we could also provide some of the background and reporting and some things that we have going, including some of the meeting dates and times that because what I don't want to do is create a secondary group of meetings, because there's already an assignment from council to have Josh handle that way. However, I think that it does inform on some of the other things. So for example, on mental health issues, we work very closely with the county because they have the overall responsibility and they have some of the tools that we don't have. I do see that this group could make some really great recommendations related to that and that relationship that we have with the county. And some of the recommendations that we've received from other commissions or the previously from the Equity Committee did inform us when we hired a person for our own staff, Stephen Gonzalez. So why don't we provide some even more things for you to read? And I think what I heard is communications, mental health and safety, and then I would say the third is the public health and safety, which is maybe some of the issues related to the sheriff's department and the fire department in terms of response, et cetera. And then we can also reach back out to you and see what it could look like for dates for subcommittee groups to meet, and in the meantime, and/or for the commission to meet on a more regular basis. And then in the meantime, you can also think through if there's a particular area that you're interested in, and if you communicate just directly with Lois and I, we'll make sure that none of you are violating. And then by the next time we are together, we will have a bit more of some meat around the bones of some things you want to do.
One other thing, if we could add, especially for the next big meeting, either like a quarterly update on the PERT and MCRT usage numbers, that would be extremely helpful, because one of my concerns is, and, like a weirdo, I ask my neighbors if they've heard of some of these things, and many of the time they haven't. So, really being able to figure out ways to promote the existence of services like the MCRT and the PERT. They're great resources that I feel are vastly underutilized and could be extremely helpful to people, especially in times of need.
I'm the incoming chair of the Behavioral Health Advisory Board for the county, so whatever resources I can bring and share. I am getting to know very intimately the workings of behavioral health services. It's $1 billion budget for the county, so there's a lot of moving pieces, but any of the information and policy information that I could bring, and if we have an ad hoc committee, I would love to be part of that as well. I do think that MCRT and PERT are being quite well utilized. This area, North Coastal area, is the third largest utilizer of MCRT services. So, but I do agree, and we talked about this in the Equity Committee, is that there are a lot of people locally who may not have an awareness of it. So yes, we've talked about a public service campaign, billboards, et cetera, to get people to utilize the service more. But I think it is being utilized in North Coastal.
I think there's also a disconnect on it because Chris, remind me, MCRT, is there 2 teams, 1 team?
I believe there are 2 teams for the North County right now, and that is for a large area.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has been, and we can get more into this, we can have somebody from the county come and talk about it, but there's 2 teams. And so if you are the person who's having the crisis at that moment and the teams are somewhere else, it's like it's not even available to you. So it's kind of it doesn't feel quite like it's the thing that you could rely on. So that's one of the things. And since the last time that we communicated about it, I think there is now this second team. But I think by this time, I think the county thought that there was going to be 4 or 5 teams, maybe even 6 teams, and they've had a really difficult time staffing those. But I know Molly's had her light on and off, and I think she had something that she wanted to add.
I just didn't know if Captain Lawrence, you wanted to share what 2 things you wanted to see prioritized. I wanted to give you an opportunity.
Just along the lines of what we've spoken about tonight and what the city manager already addressed is, again, community outreach. More information we can get out there, the better. Whether it's crime prevention tips or just this conversation that we're having right now, just the resources available to the communities, because there are myriad of resources available, and much to Commissioner Taylor's point, a lot of people don't know about what's available to them. So just getting the information out there, I think, is very important.
Thank you. I don't know how long we have. I'm like watching the time tick here. I don't know if there's like a time that this ends, but I would, like to just make the recommendation that we get something scheduled for January. We get all of the resources that we can. And if there aren't any objections or people that want to add something else, I think focusing on mental health, wellness, and substance abuse, supporting the unhoused and those that are affected. It sounds like fire prevention kind of overlaps a couple different areas. And then I think community outreach is going to be umbrellaed over all of those things. And so that might be something that we focus on, those two main areas, and then figure out the community outreach. But I think for me, one of my goals, coming out of 2024, is really just, engaging the public more, because I do think we have incredible resources here. I learned a lot about them tonight. But how do we make sure that the public is actually aware of those, that they can utilize them? And then working with the county, I think that Robin is an incredible resource to BHAB. And, it's like all of you have such vast experience that we can use what we learn, but getting that into the hands of the people that will benefit the most.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that, I've been kind of quiet here, but a lot of the things that I'd been thinking about have been mentioned here already. But I tried to answer your questions the best I could directly with a really broad view of this. So I'm going to just throw my 2 cents in. And I think we need to create an environment where we foster a closer, positive, and productive working relationship with public safety in this town, right? And between our group, the city, and the people, and we explore and implement creative ideas to encourage community engagement, give a voice to the public, and communicate the importance of community involvement. And that may take many different forms, right? Number 2, we need to support the sheriff in her quest at the state level and the county level, and support Chief Gordon and Captain Lawrence within our own city in their efforts to continue to keep our community safe. Our commission should make recommendations to that end and give public safety officers the tools and the support they need to be effective and to feel appreciated. And my perspective, I come from nearly 4 decades of law enforcement experience. So I worked within the Sheriff's Department for a long, long time. I was a station commander, and I worked in internal affairs, and I can tell you that unequivocally that these gentlemen, they deal with lots of problems, and it's all with the greater good in mind. I wanted to make sure I said that. And this gentleman here, Captain Lawrence, we're not going to do any better, okay? So we really do need to support him and make sure that he gets what he needs. And I don't know Chief Gordon, but I think that's probably the same. What additional information do we need to be successful? You asked that question, and you're going to send some resources out. The other thing I think is that maybe from City Council and the mayor, maybe some more direction on maybe what their priorities might be, because it was so open-ended. I'm glad to hear, like I said, I feel like I'm on the same page with everybody here, and it's really good to hear good to hear you guys speak. But I think defining maybe what their priorities might be to help us understand where they're coming from would be a good thing, because it just seems kind of open-ended to some degree. And then for what success looks like, I think we've achieved effective outreach to the community, give them a voice, and get increased community engagement, like Captain Lawrence mentioned, and that will enhance public safety. So anyway, those are just some of the things that I had written down even before I came here to the meeting, and it sounds like we're on the same page, so it's good.
I just wanted to reiterate the housing policy as it relates to extremely low-income people. I don't think we can tackle homelessness without understanding that issue and I'd like to bring that back around. And the other one is data. We talked a lot about reports and, calls, but I think what we also need is sort of the outcomes. What is the result when we call MCRT? Who are we able to help through which of these calls versus who's still falling through the cracks, or who, do we not have the resources to, or the right place to refer them to, and what would that look like?
I just also wanted to mention that for ad hocs, there is a limit of 3. So if we move forward with the 3 that was recommended, there would be no other ad hocs created at this time.
Lois is way better at math than I am, but so you're saying there can only be 3 total?
So the currently ad hocs that were mentioned were community outreach, mental health and addiction, and unhoused resources. Those were.
And public. So I think what I heard too was that community outreach and communications is really a part of all of them. So we won't have a separate one on that. So, okay. I think you made it through your first meeting. Lauren, do you still have something?
I was just going to say, in addition to maybe the ad hoc committees, just like resource readiness, in the sense of what I'm hearing with Aleve and Hain, there's a lot of different ways that we could, from a wildland urban interface, there's a lot of ways we can fight fire and prevent fire. A lot of strategies that we can use. I know where I work, we have reserves that we can call in, that we train, and that might not be something Chief wants to do, but just resource readiness in encompassing like resources for your people with the Counseling International or whatever those look like. Also, like truck companies, what do you actually need for the rank and file to actually do their jobs? And then also, on top of that, I heard the sheriff, Captain Lawrence say that, he'd like to have more deputies. Having more of a difficult time with recruitment, maybe necessarily. How can we help with that? Like actually providing bodies that want to do these jobs and serve their communities. So I don't know, I was kind of thinking like that more in an umbrella of like resource readiness, and could kind of encompass a lot of those things in addressing how we can be successful.
Are you thinking like in terms of a subcommittee, kind of a public safety, the resources and the tools, if you will, okay.
Yeah, kind of more in that, just because, just from what we've kind of discussed, it's definitely something I think there's always need for different types of resources for so many different things. I mean, as they know so well, it's very complicated with what we have to do, hazardous materials and wildland fire and suicides and mental health, right? Like it's a lot.
Lauren might be our 4th subcommittee of 1 working with the staff, if she's okay with that.
Yes.
Okay.
I'd be happy.
Yay, we figured out a way for 4, Lois.
If I could,
Wish for, though, right?
the way I understood and was thinking, like the first when you said community outreach, that you were thinking that and I liked the idea that the ad hoc would be looking to like engage the community to find out what their concerns are. So I don't know that, like, her original idea wasn't that there would be community outreach for mental health and for homelessness. It would be sort of a committee where we're actually trying to engage in some way the community and like, what do you want from us? Is that correct?
It's an initial thought. I think the most important thing with community outreach, and I may be wrong, but it sounds like we all came here with the same ideas of what priorities are, and I think we all have very different communities we engage with here in Encinitas, and it sounds like public health and safety, most people are saying the same things are their priorities. And so I think we have a lot to chew on with just mental health, wellness, and substance abuse, and then the unhoused, and then, it's like public health entities and everything that involves with that. Like, I would even say that maybe once we chew on that, at the end of the year, a survey goes out to the community of what else is there that needs to be addressed. But for me, I think those three things would be a lot to work on from what I'm hearing.
I think super important is this community outreach and a link between our public safety group and the community so that they understand and they're involved, because the only way to impact public safety is through the people, and getting them involved. So I think that's a huge part of this as well.
Yeah, sorry if I didn't, my take is perhaps we don't do a public survey to begin. We work on these things and figure out how to outreach to the community of the resources that are available. I'm just, it's like already my mind's like mental health month, and what does that look like? Like, it's encompassing our providers and making sure they have wellness. It's encompassing our schools and making sure that we're going out and talking to them about, these resources in the community in general. So it's like community outreach as an overall is going to be over all of these things. I just worry if we put out a survey that's going to take a while and then we're like, here we are back at this meeting again, as opposed to saying like, are we going to agree that this is what we are hearing are the priorities, and then we're going to work on this and then do the community outreach to provide the information, the resources that we all learned about today and what we continue to learn. That's just how my mind's.
I just wanted to pick up something that you'd said about we all have our communities that we're in touch with, right? I think that's one of the things about Encinitas that's sort of part of our character, is that we do have sort of those 5 regional communities. And that's not the only way to think about it, right? We've got many other breakdowns of different communities, but are there strategies for reaching targeted communities, and do we want to try to be proactive in identifying those and sort of distribution channels or content channels that get the right information to the right people?
I'd suggest as we work on these ad hoc things, as we start building them out, during that process, we identify the communities that we need to communicate with to get those things through. One of my big concerns is that we end up taking on too much and not accomplishing anything. So, I like the idea of the 2 or 3 really big things that are really heavy. I think the lift of those 3 things are going to be monumental. So, and each of those things has their own unique communities that we need to get involved with. And, then the other piece of it is just, giving people the basic information that they need to be able to make Captain Lawrence and Captain Gordon's jobs a little bit easier.
That sounds good. And then also, I want to let you know that what I hear about communication is it tracks with everything that we do at the city. We know that there's ways that we should find ways to communicate better and more often, and different channels and that type of thing. And in fact, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing a presentation on another communication platform that we're hoping that the council will be supportive of us doing, and it includes an online engagement tool to ask questions, et cetera. So if you didn't have enough tonight and you want to watch the council meeting on Wednesday night, it's right at the beginning.
I think it would be great to use the media, the print media, like the Coast News, or once we have our ad hoc committees or establish which priorities we want, is to publicize it that way. Because I don't think a lot of people go on the city website. I really don't think anybody, I'll give you a good example. Behavioral Health Services had a workshop or a community engagement activity at the library. 6 people showed up. So, and I was one of them, and I invited 2 other people because I wanted to see what they were, I know the people who do it, and I wanted to see what they were doing. So basically, essentially, 3 people showed up. And so there has to be a better way to communicate with the community. And unfortunately, I don't think websites are the best way. So if we're going to do a newsletter, it'd be a great thing to get that out.
You're saying there's an information desert out there?
Well, I'm not on Instagram. I know I'm old, and I'm not on Instagram or Facebook or any of those. I don't choose to be. But if you're not, you might pick up the Coast News when you're out and about. So there might be something in there that people would see. I'm just saying you got to touch people in all different ways, including youth, including the schools, the high schoolers, and let them know what's going on and get their input. So there's got to be multiple ways of addressing it. That's what I'm saying.
I wanted to just, since we're going to be doing some ad hoc things, I'll just add that in these last few months, I've taken on attending the Live Well for the North County Leadership Initiative that happens. That happens on a Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month. And so, that's the opportunity to find out what the county's doing. I'm happy individually to talk about what I learned there, if that's allowed. I'm happy, I'm at a point where I can go to those meetings. And I'll say I was surprised to learn how many of the public health initiatives are running through our schools. The action plan that they put together through Live Well, 75% of those things are going through the schools. That's the touch point. That's where it's happening. That's where mental health is being engaged. And I'll also call out that the San Marcos Unified School District is doing something amazing. I mean, they have a system similar to, I can't do the acronym, MCRT. They got 6 teams of 6 people that are dealing with the high stress families. They have a 3-tier system. And if you get to that 3-tier, the 3rd tier, 1 of 6 people go out to the families and do the crisis intervention. So it was a very amazing presentation that I saw there, and it's good. So happy to see any of you all at the first Wednesday of the month.
So I think from a staff perspective, I think we have a good feeling for what it is that you're looking for, and we'll be, obviously we have some questions and some communication that we need to get back. Some of you are extremely difficult to find dates that you're available for meetings, but we will be able to find something. I'm sure of it. So unless any of you have any final thoughts or things that you'd like to, you know where to find Lois and I and the chiefs. I would, maybe you could entertain a motion to adjourn.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
Just for those watching at home and in the audience. So we do send out what we call constant contacts, so people can sign up for city events. So we did add public health and safety agendas and updates. So anyone interested in signing up, you'll get an automatic notice every time we post an agenda. So that's on our website, and under a tab, it's called I Want To. Then there's another tab, it's Register, City Updates. You're going to see a number of items there. One of them will be public health and safety agendas and updates, as well as many others. You can check as many as you want. You just put in an email, and then you'll get that blast whenever the information about that goes out. So just wanted to point that out.
I raise a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good meeting. I know, I've been avoiding those Live Well meetings. I don't know why. I know, because I've been to a few. I haven't gone on the regular.
I mean, it's hard to not feel like it's just a whole bunch of people.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Val. It's good seeing you.
Yeah, it'll be so great.
Thank you, you too.
So great.
Hey.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
It's nice meeting you.
If there was going to be a robust agenda or not, we probably could have done a month ago. Thank you. I know it's brand new. New phone.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you. Get to know you all better.
Yeah, it's hard not to feel like these moments are a whole bunch of ideas to action, right?
That is the problem. Basically, have to be in a crisis to get any services from the personal service. And the staffing issues are huge, the lack of clinicians, mental health workers. But if I can help you in any way, you know, in terms of, it's not necessarily a matter of having the resources, because it's knowing what the resources are. It's making sure that your son has his rights respected. You know, that's the way. Yeah, so,